Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Okay, back again. Yes, it is the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, episode number 96. I am your humble servant, Trek Lord of West Michigan, captain of the USS Grand Petoskey of the Starfleet International Fan Club here in Michigan and in Region 13. Coming at you, I am joined, as always, by my faithful companions. Number one, to the left, or at least to the left of my screen. I don't know sometimes what it looks like on YouTube, but I'm talking about Kay. Kay, how the hell are you on this lovely Sunday?
I am doing very well. I'm enjoying the sunshine.
Oh my God, it's the great. Yeah, we're recording this the day before the beginning of meteorological spring here in Michigan, which is like, oh, it doesn't really mean much and no nothing because it'll still snow next week. We've had a snowstorm this weekend, so we're looking forward to that being done. Also, of course, always joined by my fellow Trek purist and unforgiving critic, Mr. Peter Stein. Mr. Peter Stein, how are you?
Doing well, everybody.
Excellent. Well, let's jump right on into it. We did have a news story which is relevant in particular today. That would be the fact that the Hero Collector Star Trek Starship models, which were previously sold by a company called Eagle Moss, which went belly up last July, taking $200 of my money with it. That was an outstanding order that I had, has been snapped up by another UK company called Master Replicas, and the site goes live. By the time you're listening to this, it actually went live on Sunday morning. So, Kay, I know that you're not a collector. I am a massive collector of the Eagle Moss product. I started probably in 2014.
I couldn't tell by everything that's in your background.
Absolutely well, actually, none of this stuff really is. But if you in my den, that big glass case, that's all Eagle Moss. And you're right, it does kind of like the cordyceps in The Last of Us. It spreads around the house. But Peter, you've dabbled a bit, have you not?
Yes, not particularly with the Eagle Moss things, other than looking at them and wanting to pick them up.
Right.
But I do collect starships, so this is exciting that starships are available because they've been making some of the more obscure ones that I
I definitely have some of the more obscure ones in my case. And just a super brief history of Eagle Moss. Again, it was a British company called Hero Collector / Eagle Moss, which is their main spokesperson. His name is Ben Robinson. He's all over socials, particularly on Twitter, which is where we learned about this news several months ago. Did I already lose my badge? Oh no, there it is. Okay, sorry, I was looking on the wrong side. So this is great news. And again, what these Master Replica folks have done is that they snapped up basically inventory that Eagle Moss had when Eagle Moss went belly up, as I said, which was fantastically sudden last July. I had placed an order at the end of June, and then their website went dead and they had no customer service number. So, oh well, stuff happens. There goes my money, but it's only money, right? But yeah, the line, as it's mentioned here, was launched in 2013, went on to include over 400 ships in different scales, special editions, all the kinds of different stuff. And they've been available on Amazon and eBay and places in the aftermarket where you're going to find really bloated prices. So no idea what that pricing is going to look like when this launches, but as soon as we get done recording, I will take a peek and then we will find out. So good. All right. Well, that is my thoughts of news. And yeah, Kay, I gave you a ship, but it was a Voyager model, and it was an old Hallmark ornament. So You're sort of close to being a model collector. You have one,
and I cherish it so much. It's my little favorite ship.
I am so glad to hear it. So, all right. Without further ado, let's move on to talking about this week's episodes of Picard. We're in season 3. Obviously, we're talking about episodes 4 and 5. Peter, why don't you jump in talking about episode 4, no-win scenario, or scenario, as some people choose to say it.
Yes, the no-win scenario. So, this is a lot of this episode is sitting and waiting, but Vadic, who we discover is a changeling, contacts her superior and is ordered to pursue the Titan at all costs. Doing so in the nebula requires disengagement of the portal technology, so poof, it's gone. With only a few hours of power remaining on the Titan, Riker admits Picard was right and suggests he spend his last moments bonding with Jack. In the holodeck, Picard and Jack tell each other some of their adventures, but are joined by local grumpy man Shaw, who bitterly recounts his experience as a Starfleet engineer during No One Ever Saw This Coming, Wolf 359.
What? Peter hasn't been talking about that for months, or since the show started, so that's a month.
Yeah. Riker, Beverly, and Picard form a risky plan to use an energy pulse from the nebula to recharge the ship's systems. Shaw and Seven help
basically Discovery 2.0.
Yeah, I have thoughts on this. Seven identifies and kills the changeling imposter. The Titan damages the Shrike on their way out of the nebula, finally, and is met by a plethora of space jellyfish. Actually, they're more like squid. But as they warp away, Picard realizes
but I digress.
That he briefly met Jack 5 years earlier and inadvertently dismissed his attempt at familial connection.
Ooh.
And as we end, Jack has a hallucination of a destroyed world and a voice that says, "Find me."
Whoa. All right. Well, Peter, since you did the reading, and it sounds like church. Peter, since you've done the reading, because Peter, I know you're a church guy, why don't you go ahead and deliver the rest of the sermon? What do you think?
Oh, boy. This episode definitely was a step up, I thought.
You guys were killing me last time hating on this show, so but then again, Kay may come back and drop the axe. I don't know.
They did do a bit better with Riker this episode, I thought. He still wasn't where I want him to be, but he at least was doing better. Obviously the Shaw thing we saw coming from 600,000 light years away.
The dipshit from Chicago. And of course, as I mentioned, I had met Todd Stashwick, and he's just he's as delightful in person, though. He's a nice guy, not kind of a grumbly wumbly, but he's from Chicago.
Yeah. So there's that. That was an interesting conversation. I thought it was odd, though, that they invented a new situation with Picard and Jack Crusher, the dead.
The 5 years ago bit? Dead Jack Crusher. Oh, no, I understand.
Yeah, so the dead shuttle bit, because there are 2 episodes that they could have already done that with Booby Trap and the other one's escaping me, where Picard actually did pilot the Enterprise on just thrusters with no power through an asteroid.
Right. But yeah, Booby Trap is probably the best example. Okay, I know that's very inside baseball, but that was the Enterprise stuck in this field of energy, and anytime they use energy, more radiation pumps into the ship. So Picard has to figure out
I remember that one.
Yeah, and it's when Geordi meets who we might find out is Geordi's eventual wife, Leia Brahms. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but anyway, he met her in a holodeck recreation, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I agree with you. I would have enjoyed more of a callback, but I probably see how they're trying to ramp up more of the,
it's just weird, because there's a point where Riker says it's never been done with a starship this large. It's like, I'm sorry, the Galaxy class is much larger than the Titan. It's pretty
much the biggest. Yeah, exactly.
Well, also, you know Lower Decks did it better.
True.
You stop now. But that's okay.
And the other thing for me for this episode was the changeling bit was interesting. It was a little. You can definitely tell how they were thinking about using the bluegill instead of the changelings, because how you figure out that someone's a bluegill is the something they didn't know.
Right. Very true.
The changelings is the DNA and all that stuff, which they try to explain in the next episode, but c'est la vie. The recharging the warp core bit was this is the one thing in the episode that I hated, because that's
how they jump started like battery.
Not how antimatter reactions work at all. You can't jump start a warp core like a carburetor. That's what they did. It looked cool.
The guy in the truck pulls up, smoking a cigar. Well, it's going to be $200 for me just being out here.
Yeah. So,
and also, when has science ever stopped Star Trek. Let's be real here.
It's not called science
Generally,
Trek.
They try to be consistent.
Sometimes. Well, yes, you write yourself a note to Erin McDonald then, and she'll be like, well, I don't know, man, I wasn't there.
It's also warp core, and everyone's like, oh, no one knows how it works. I have 2 books on my shelf that tell me otherwise.
Yeah, you see, this is why you guys are such a perfect balance, because you're the nitpicking nerd like I am, and then Kay's like, well, here's some dramatic stuff that was good, and here's some dramatic stuff that was stupid, and that's why we have such a great balance. So
I always love to talk about the dramatic stuff.
The dramatic stuff. Peter, any final thoughts before we kick it over to the esteemed dramatic stuff, lady person?
Not terribly, other than I thought it was rather interesting to have Picard himself drop an F-bomb in this particular episode.
So much controversy.
I've seen them show, other characters using it. It's just odd to me for Jean-Luc Picard to do it because he's a little bit more refined.
Could be. He's also old as hell. Same thing with Riker forgetting. For Riker forgetting about for
characters to express things. I'm not against expletives. It's just that for me, when you reduce it to just that, it generally for me shows a lack of intelligence rather than actually just I'm upset because there's other ways to express that. And so I don't know. I just didn't like it for Picard himself. I see that they do it with other people, but
yeah. It's jarring, and which is why the internet is kind of been pissing themselves sideways over it. But you do have you do have to consider, I think, that he's an older guy. It's a very stressful situation, and
it wasn't sometimes a stressful situation. It was in the holodeck.
Well, it was an emotionally stressful situation. That sometimes things like that just creep out. So anyway, that's how I will mildly defend the not so mild profanity. But anyway, Kay, take it away.
All right. So I am really enjoying the concepts that they're trying to pull out with the changelings and Shaw forcing Picard to deal with his time as Locutus, and even some of the weird tricks that they've been using to try to get out of these unwinnable situations. But I'm still just kind of exhausted with the drama that they're creating between characters for no other reason than just filling screen time. I am going to vent about Riker, but Charlie, I'd like to hear your thoughts about this specifically, if you're comfortable talking about it after I'm kind of done venting. Because as someone with depression, I'm just really irritated as how they turned his depression, which is about a very serious life-changing issue, into more of a midlife crisis. He just needed to go out with the boys and get his matcha back, and then he'll be totally realize that life is worth living.
He's he's super way past midlife crisis because he's in his character's in his 70s now. But
and he's talking about the passing of his child and how he had this giant existential crisis, and it brought him into this huge depression. But Troy is also a counselor, so it seems like she would have been easily able to see the signs of depression and not just been well, I'm sick of you, you need to leave. And treatment for depression is not a stigma, at least according to Bashir in DS9. That's not something that's stigmatized anymore. And so he just abandons his family and acts like an asshole, leaving Troy to deal with the fallout. And, they still have a daughter who's probably really confused and frustrated that her dad just left. And it just seemed like he had this proverbial going and buying a motorcycle to run around and then realize that life was worth living.
Vroom, vroom.
Right, which seemed like it was more of an insult from those who suffer from mental illness, and he really downplayed the loss of a child. So that was my event.
I understand. I will say, as some people who know me, anybody who really knows me knows that I've lost a child, and it was 3 years ago. It was my son Parker. He was 13. He was ill from birth. We knew it was coming. He was my son with my ex-wife. Because of her machinations, I would say, I certainly didn't get to spend the time with him that I would like to have during his life, but spent more time with him when April and I got married. He spent a lot of time over here. We really got to know him as he grew, and it was just it's devastating, and there's really no other way to quantify that. But one thing I will say is grief at that level of magnitude, which I think is near the upper echelons of probably anything that anybody can go through, is that there is no way to quantify how you're going to feel about it day to day. You know what I mean? You may find peace, you may never find peace. It could be different between a man and a woman. It could be, I didn't look at it, being somebody who went through it, as having like, well, that doesn't seem like a normal reaction. One thing that doesn't make a ton of sense, and that's been a struggle I've had with the timeline of the series so far, is that the timeline of the series so far doesn't make a lot of sense. Season 1, the year 2399. Season 2 jumps 2 years forward, and then season 3 seems to take place within the same year, which, for all of the changes that we see in things, doesn't tend to make a lot of sense. When we meet the Rikers again in season 1, the death of their son Thaddeus happened at some point in the past. We don't know when.
7 years before that. No, it was 7,
right,
because they mentioned that he would have been 18, like a week before would have been his 18th birthday. So doing the math, you realize that he had passed 7 years ago. So it's 9 years now at that point.
It does seem super unusual that, who knows what precipitated the blowout that they had that Riker left home. You don't know. I mean, and their daughter is now, 15, 16. I don't remember how old she was in season 1, but she's of that teenage, and, and who knows what was going on at home that precipitated him leaving. This is potentially just him showing some great regret. Marriage is challenging. Kay, you know that. I know that. I know that 3 times fold. So without any real context to figure out what's going on right there, I can't pass judgment kind of in the same way, because you have no idea what precipitated. And even if you didn't, I mean, this is humanizing those characters to me in more ways than you can really conceptualize, because the way that people deal with grief, there's no barometer. It doesn't matter if you're married to a empathetic / telepathic half alien who's also a counselor, and you're William T. Riker, the indestructible man. We're all human, which is what Star Trek kind of shows us time and again. We're all human, and we're all going to have less than great responses. We're still going to be Jean-Luc Picard and drop an F-bomb every once in a while. You know what I mean? So to me, I would have to respectfully disagree about, I don't want to see Picard turn into, like a Welsh sailor, and be swearing every other word. But you know what? Dropping an F-bomb in the situation that they're in doesn't surprise me that much. But yes, you're right. It's not like Jean-Luc Picard that we knew in Star Trek: The Next Generation 35 years ago, but the android Picard, I don't know, you know what, it could have been a glitch in his algorithms. All right, let's use the android excuse. Yeah.
I think for me it was more, I was irritated that it seemed like by the end of the episode he was fine. Like he had his adventure, and then everything was fixed then. And that's kind of what grated me a little bit of this is a huge, if you're dealing with this loss, this is a huge thing.
The thing is, Troy is as yet, they spoke on comms, but she has yet to show up, because she's going to show up in person, we think. So there, and then there's that one throwaway line, like, you dumped us to go be with Picard or whatever you heard in the trailer. So we'll see. We'll see, but let's go ahead and move on. A lot of stuff has been said. I like it. I mean, I've been a little bit more of an advocate all along than you guys have, just because I think, you got some older characters, and they're going to behave a little differently, because we all behave a little differently as we get older. So you're right. It's not as static as potentially a lot of people feel, as you guys feel. But I'm loving on it. And I'm loving on even more what we get in episode 5. So Kay, episode 5, Imposter, is yours.
All right. So we start out with a vision for Jack showing murdering the crew. He's still getting that kind of red flashes and the weird kind of red roots that are climbing all over the place. Shaw, in his true nihilistic form, contacts Starfleet because he's just wanting to see the world burn, and I am here for it.
He is. What is it? That great meme of Elmo standing with the flames behind him.
That is definitely
that Shaw.
Yeah, it's either that or the one of the guy just sitting with a coffee cup and amongst the flames going, everything is fine. That's Shaw, and I love it. I love it. As they are returning to the Intrepid, shows up, and then Ro Lauren, who had originally betrayed Starfleet for the Marquise, becomes the person who's going to be interviewing Picard and Riker, and they end up having a back and forth. We realize that the changeling saboteurs can now imitate full bodily autonomy as far as intestines and all internal organs. So finding
They
them
are
is going to be a little bit
skin
difficult.
jobs. Skin
Yes.
jobs. Yes, like
Finding them is going to be a little
BSG.
more difficult.
Kind of. There's-
And then, so there's a little bit of back and forth whether we're like, is Ro a changeling? What's going on? Ooh,
Right.
ooh.
Right.
And then you find out that she's actually not, and her and Picard have kind of a heart to heart, bury the axe, so to speak. And in the meantime, we've got, what's their faces? Worf and Rafi going after a Vulcan criminal named Kryn, who conveniently knows all of the criminal underworld and is the go-to person to get stuff. So really easy,
Perfection.
another MacGuffin yet. So they kind of have a really nice back and forth where Rafi stabs Worf,
Right.
which was enjoyable.
It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I
Not
have to
gonna
say,
do
I watched this episode and I thought, is season 3 good now? Is this because it feels like maybe they got kind of the junk out of the way first of like confusing, and they've really been building a solid season. So this was one of them where I like genuinely enjoyed this episode.
I might have to toss this one in the bracket for episode 100. Oh, wait, we don't talk about episode 100. Oops. Never mind.
So I really enjoyed how they kind of were using mirrors for everyone. Like Shaw is definitely a mirror for Riker. I mean, his first name is also William. It seems like that's pretty obvious. You have Ro going up against Picard talking about duty and, obligation. And really, she's just kind of she just didn't have main character protection when every time she like defied orders. So
Right.
it didn't work out in her favor.
Right. She was Starfleet's bad girl,
Yeah. Well,
if you go
I mean-
right back to, and I have to, I wanted to this weekend, I didn't, but I wanted to go back to back and watch her first episode, which was called Ensign Ro from season 5 of TNG, and then Preemptive Strike, which was one of the last episodes of TNG from season 7, which is when she left and became the Maquis.
Mm-hmm.
I do love how she said, well, after years with the Maquis, I turned myself in. I'm like, if you watch DS9, there was no turn yourself in with the Maquis. They all pretty much got killed, and anybody who didn't die ended up in prison.
There
So
was a line where like the Dominion wiped them all out.
yeah, there was a line from Voyager when Voyager finally gets contact with the Alpha Quadrant, which happens middle of season 4. Chakotay gets a message from one of his lieutenants in their cell who said, yeah, who relayed essentially what happened when the Cardassians hooked up with the Dominion, is that the Dominion said, it was like the checklist. They said, yeah, we're going to sweep through the Badlands and kill every Maquis base, wipe everybody out, and anybody who escaped went to jail. So that's what happened to Ro, really. She didn't really give herself up in this noble, like, well, I fought. She tends to kind of spin it in a way that I think is weird. But anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, I enjoyed that, they were kind of playing that back and forth as far as like, her defying orders and doing what she thought was right, and the lens that it's put on it versus the lens that's put on like Picard and Riker's actions as them being heroic when they defy actions, which is something that Shaw is again continually pointing out because he is just the vice to all of this. And so again, I really enjoyed the world building that they were doing. I enjoyed how they're moving the plot forward. There wasn't as much strife and conflict for characters just for strife's sake, which I enjoyed. It seemed like everybody was kind of falling into the routine where even the strife between Picard and Ro made sense, as far as it was more of them building bridges versus trying to tear each other down, or just, the conflict was already there and they were fixing it. And then, we realized that the voice that Jack keeps hearing as far as like the find me is Beverly's voice, which is probably has to do with the fact that he had nightmares as a kid. And so it's probably him kind of trying to self-soothe as he was going through those nightmares as a kid that he doesn't remember, and having her talk him through those. So, some really great setups as far as plot goes. Again, I am just living for Shaw and his nihilistic outlook. I need 100% more of that in every episode.
And keep in mind, and this is something I did this morning, and I put it on our Secret Friends Discord. I did it in several chats on Facebook that you guys are part of, and in the region is part of. Somebody did a great piece of fan art that just has 7 and Shaw and says Star Trek Titan. And I said, start sending this out. And anybody who's listening to my voice, use Twitter, use Instagram, use whatever you use. Tag Paramount, send it to Paramount, write them a letter if that's your thing. Because let's face it, in the old days, that's what they did when Star Trek Discovery had Captain Pike and Number One and Spock as characters. And again, somebody refresh my memory. I feel like there was something like that involved, that there was enough interest generated, people were loving on it enough that we got Strange New World. So does anybody remember the details of that? I know I'm kind of flying off the cuff. Peter, anything ring a bell?
I think it was just the viewership that got them that show.
Okay.
I don't know if there was necessarily a letter writing campaign.
Yeah. So if you're, and you're probably not watching this if you're listening to the show, because that wouldn't make any sense at all. But if by some chance, go subscribe to Paramount Plus. They do a 30-day. I think the current code is like Picard. It'll get you 30 days. I could be wrong. Google is your friend. But go ahead and share that image. If you saw my post this morning, if you're on our Discord, if you're part of one of our pages, if you're part of the chapter, part of the region, please go out there, share, let people know you love it. That's the only way, particularly in this streaming world, that we're going to get a spin-off show based on this, unless by some miracle. So anyway, all right, end of my PSA. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Kay, any final thoughts before we kick it over to Peter?
I'm actually, instead of being hesitantly optimistic, I'm just genuinely optimistic. Like, I'm excited to watch episode 7 or episode 6.
I am super glad. You guys were starting to worry me there, and I was afraid we were going to fall into a Lower Decks situation when I had my two prior hosts that made me hate Lower Decks.
Can you blame us, though? I mean, the first 2 seasons were not great.
It was tough, and I know you guys were pretty tough on these first three episodes, particularly 2 and 3, and I get it. But we shouldn't speak for Peter. We should let Peter speak for himself. Peter, rap to me. What's up?
I liked this episode a lot. Ro is one of my favorite characters.
Such a great character.
Next Generation. Partially because she just kind of does her own thing. She does what she thinks is right, but she does it her way. And I appreciate that. Anyway, I did like how they characterized the conflict between Picard and Ro. It felt very much like it was a follow-up to where we left off at the end of Preemptive Strike with those two characters.
Yeah.
I know I said that there is a little bit more emotion with Picard in the previous episode. This episode is where I would have found it appropriate, because this is where they are. There's a lot of charged emotions in that scene, especially when they get to the holodeck.
Yeah.
And it was very well done. When they first brought her in, I was exceptionally concerned, because Ro is one of my favorite characters.
Right. Yeah.
Please don't do something dumb.
But did they? Did they do something dumb, or did they do something?
They did pull a dumb, in my opinion. But it's not. It's more of a preference thing, not a big thing. It was more the bring back a character, let them drop a major thing, and then blow them up.
Right. By the way, full spoilers. You know what? I'm thinking there's a name to the episode in here. Should we call it Well Dumb? Like instead of Well Done? Well Dumb? Question mark?
Dumb. Yeah.
Well Dumb. Yes, that is now the name of the episode. It's Well Dumb with a question mark.
But I thought it was decently executed how they got her to do her things. It's still a little weird to me that we just have everybody going to Starfleet Intelligence. Like, couldn't she just be with the JAG office or something to do the interview or something? It's like Worf is part of Intelligence, Rafi is part of Intelligence, Ro is part of Intelligence. Right. Why is everyone part of Intelligence? What is this?
Well, then they wouldn't have been able to tie in Ro being
right.
No, I get that, but it's just bizarre to me that there's all this, just like everybody's over in Intelligence, where we never really heard about them before.
Right. Well, and maybe
that exist.
Maybe that's why they're doing it, just trying to forge some kind of new ground, as opposed to the same old and it's Section 31 again. Because Section 31.
Section 31.
You see, try to look at the sunny side. They're giving us something new that, yes, we do know about Starfleet Intelligence, but a lot of it has been name drop. And here's one bad admiral, and here's another bad admiral, and then now we're getting people in Starfleet Intelligence who are not bad dudes. You know what I mean? So
yeah. But it was good there with all of that. Shaw being Shaw was still enjoyable.
That's great. Yes, I'm gonna let you guys work out your bullshit story. I'm a dipshit from Chicago or whatever.
Yeah.
He's so great.
For me, there's
He's
still
so
a
great.
little bit of the sitting there going like, how the hell did you get in command of a starship with that attitude? But I enjoy the character.
Right, exactly. So I feel like maybe the reason he's so super grumpy is back in the very beginning of season 4 in TNG, which is when Best of Both Worlds took place, he was a young kid. Maybe he wasn't even an officer. Maybe he was just a crewman. And this, maybe he was Johnny Happy-Go-Lucky. And this whole experience just absolutely changed his worldview and just made him this tough as hell. He went back to school. He became an officer, worked his way up through the ranks, and he's just unforgivably awesome at his job, with no sense of humor, with no like, hey, it's Picard and we're going to drink tea and ride horses on the holodeck or whatever. He's just not that guy. So I don't know.
I think he just doesn't like Riker and Picard's bullshit. I think that's the big thing, because he seems like an incredibly competent, well-trained officer.
And to be honest with you, to be honest with you, if you were just some rank and not even just some rank and file, but even somebody who was great, and you ran into these living legends who just do whatever the hell they want, it's like if you were a Starfleet person and you had to deal with Kirk and company, wouldn't they kind of annoy the shit out of you with all the stuff that Kirk did? Like, and I broke the Prime Directive 48 times, and I went back in time, and I did this thing and that thing, and I slept with David Keeler and all these green women, and blah blah blah.
We see it with temporal investigations, like we know.
Yeah, exactly. They don't. Yeah, when someone is famous in universe in Star Trek, other people just kind of hate their guts who have similar jobs or have to interact with them on a professional level. Normal people are like, ooh, Captain Kirk, he's a legend. And people in Starfleet are like, oh, Captain Kirk, fuck that guy. Oh, oops, did I say that out loud? No,
it depends on the character.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I also have to say that I thoroughly... From the beginning, I have been thoroughly enjoying Worf, even though he hasn't always had a lot of tie into the main plot. They finally tied him in a little bit more.
Yeah.
But Worf has been Worf, doing Worf things and Worfing very well.
So much Worfing.
Especially the whole oh, he's dead. And then he comes back. I am not dead. I just stopped my heart. Imperceptible. It's like, okay, saw that one coming. That's right.
Right.
We need to rush this along. I'm in desperate need of medical attention.
Yes, or like you're not going to kill me. It's like, my friend is kind of bleeding a lot, so it's kind of his patients we're waiting on.
Yeah, let's pick up the pace, right?
So just Worf doing Worf has been enjoyable, and
Worfing away.
The funny thing for me, just a tiny little nitpick, was Rose earring is not Rose earring. It's
very true.
Earring, which I thought was funny.
Oh boy. Yeah, exactly. Well, the problem with Christie selling off all those Star Trek props in the mid 2000s is they got to go back and make new ones. So whoops, they maybe not always going to get it right. They don't have the big Paramount warehouse.
It into a new into a data chip, so that she might have needed a different type of earring for that.
Yeah, might have made a new one.
Earring had more mass, so you could have fit.
Yeah,
but
Well, and of course, she being the original Bajoran, she was the test bed for that makeup. The original Bajoran makeup had little wings at the top over the eyebrows, and they eliminated that when Nana Visitor took on the role of Major Kira as a weekly character on DS9. And so then Rose disappeared too. So I don't know. Must have been that selective Bajoran reconstructive surgery. There's a business for you.
She had her face burned during the Dominion War, like you don't know.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, she might have gotten hit by a hot shell piece of shrapnel or whatever. So, all right. Any final thoughts before we move on to we had a great conversation about these two episodes, but any final thoughts before moving on to talking about DS9? We're enthusiastically optimistic or getting close to it. Peter, have they won you over yet?
This episode is definitely a step in the right direction. I'm still hesitant about some of the inner world building, particularly with the changelings. I always get annoyed when people start throwing the word evolution around when you're dealing with a span of decades.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So, but could be more of a variant than evolution. You never know. And plus, it's aliens. It's not biological life form. Yeah, but I understand where you're coming from.
It is. I got you, Kay. It's just not life as we understand it.
This is true. Kay, good. Other thoughts? Happy?
Yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction. I am optimistic. I'm excited for the next episode.
I love it. And we will get there very soon when we come back to you in a couple of weeks. We will have episodes 6 and 7. All right, but let's move on to talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. We're in season 3. This is part 3. We're going to be rocking through 7 episodes that took place in early 1995. It was the end of my freshman year in college. I felt the show was really picking up some steam, but we'll just jump right back into it. I will read the first one instead of throwing it to one of you guys. I won't throw you under the bus, but we'll get there. Episode 14 of the season is Heart of Stone, directed by Alexander Singer. See his name a lot. We've got the superstar team of Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolf doing the writing from February of 1995. Kira's life is in jeopardy. On a mission, Odo expresses the depths of his feelings for her. Meow, meow. Meanwhile, back on the station, Narg requests a letter of recommendation to Starfleet. Wow. 2 super interesting developments, in my opinion, that propel forward storylines that will evolve throughout the rest of the series. So I love this. It was kind of framed around a mission that kind of sort of had something to do with the Maquis, but it didn't, because the Maquis launched real strong at the mid back half of season 2 of this series. Looked like it was going to be a great big deal, and then Voyager launched, and we almost never heard from the Maquis again, but for a little bit here and there. So this was a touch, but I thought this was a great episode. We're also entering the phase of the series where Kira's hair gang kind of looked like it was a hair helmet, like it was tall, but it was so manicured that she was kind of like, she was really emphasized the Kira to Kirk with the hair. I thought that was pretty amazing. I feel like it was really strong in this episode, and the ones that followed. Her hair was just pretty much rock solid. But yeah, I love this episode. I loved Nog finally kind of breaking down, talk about his real feelings, because he does go to Cisco. He says, I want to be in Starfleet. And he's like, where do I get a uniform? And like, he's kind of, they're kind of playing that for laughs a little bit because nothing works like that. But then, Cisco kind of peels away layers of the onion, finally gets Nog to admit, well, my father's a brilliant engineer, but as a Ferengi, you don't get to be a brilliant engineer. You got to be good at business. And he sucks. And because he sucks, he's never accomplished anything in his life other than being, the foil to working in my uncle's bar, which is great because later on in the series, Rom does get to be an engineer and he joins the Bajoran militia, and he's, and then eventually he works his way up to somehow becoming Nagus, which is weird because he sucks at business, but then he becomes the anti-Ferengi Nagus. But anyway, it's a bird of a different feather. I love this episode. Peter.
Yeah, it's a good episode.
Okay, great. Very good. And Kay, over to you. I'm just kidding.
It's also interesting how we get the female changeling to show up in this one.
Right.
There's the whole bit of deception going on there. I remember when I watched this the first time, I was like, how does that stone that doesn't make any sense. Because part of it, I hadn't seen like Avatar Last Airbender yet when I saw this.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen like the growing crystal cage. So otherwise I would have referenced that.
Right.
But it was one of those like, what's going on? And then when they finally were like, oh, look, it's the changelings, like, that makes sense.
Here you go.
So I thought, another thing that it kind of brings in here is the female changeling particularly, but also just the Great Link in general, the founders, their fascination and also disapproval of Odo in general is just kind of explored just a little bit at the end of the episode. Right. But that becomes a major beat throughout the rest of the series. And so it's interesting to see that start here. I loved Nog with the Starfleet bit, learning more about him. Also, Nog joining Starfleet is just a great storyline. So it's cool that it starts here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
100 proof. Kay.
Yeah, I would say that this might be my favorite episode of the bunch. I'll confirm that at the end after I remember whatever other episodes we watched. But
patent pending.
Right, exactly. I really, really enjoyed this episode because it was very reminiscent in the kind of vibe to the episode where we first met the changelings. Because as soon as you see Kara, there is something that is just off about the way that she's behaving. And even like I remember the first time watching it, I was like, what is she doing? Like, I couldn't quite put my finger on, like, is she smiling too much? Is it that she just seems really, really helpless and like kind of downtrodden? Like, what is going on with her? And even watching it a second time, I still couldn't quite put my finger on it. It's just she felt off as soon as Odo found her.
Right.
And so it's one of those where you're like wondering the entire time, is this Kira? What is going on? And then she, confesses her love back to Odo, and I'm like, this feels weird. This is wrong. This is weird. So it totally makes sense. Yeah. And it's one of those where they really let the viewer in on the joke, so to speak, but without actually letting them know like what the joke is until you see the punchline. And I really enjoyed, the acting and being able to make those subtle changes and acknowledge those subtle changes without it being overly obvious is what I think made this episode really, really strong.
For sure. Cool. Good deal. All right. Kay, I'll toss it back to you for episode 15.
Yeah. So we have Destiny, directed by Les Lando and written by David S. Cohen and Martin A. Weiner, aired February 13th of 95. And this is when, despite Trakor's Bajoran prophecy of destruction, Sisko's assists to a joint scientific venture with the Cardassians for open communications through the Bajoran wormhole. Sisko is forced to face his status as emissary seriously in the face of the prophecy. So again, this is a really fun one. I think that you get it where the A and B plot kind of like merge in the middle, where you have it where Sisko's grappling with his role as emissary, Kira's grappling with her, religion and, him being the emissary as well as her boss. And you get to see some really fun Cardassians come on board and as they're establishing the wormhole and just, excuse me. Overall,
So
it's very
emotional.
fun. You even had some really fun moments with O'Brien as he's like,
Oh yeah.
Like
He's getting
yelling
hit on. Right.
Getting yelled at by this Cardassian scientist. She's yelling at him, and then all of a sudden she's like, "I'm very fruitful," and he's like, "Wait, whoa, what? Whoa!"
that passed for Cardassian flirting, and they don't mess around. You flirt in Cardassia, it's like, oh, it's time to get down because we want to have a little Cardassian.
Exactly.
They don't mess about. Yikes!
But again, you also start to see the continued kind of separation between the Obsidian Order and the central government, because the scientists were sent by the military branch, and then this third person kind of pops in, and they're like, "Oh, actually, she's from the Obsidian Order, but was told to sabotage everything." And so they, like, the other two Cardassians, just rat her out right at the end there. So you start to see that kind of crumbling infrastructure.
Which in Cardassian parlance means next week she's dead. They execute her. They had her they had her trial. She was guilty, and then they kicked her off a cliff. So yes, Cardassian justice. So Peter, how about you?
Yeah, this one's a good one. I think this one also has like a little bit of the idea of what do you do if you you think you know the future with a prophecy, but you don't know what actually leads to it, and so you start double second guessing yourself and doing all this stuff. And I kind of like that bit because at least I don't know why, but I like that sort of thing where it's like someone has an idea of the future and they're like, I want to prevent this, or I want to make sure this happens. And it's like, you don't know what leads to it, so you can't. And so it's just interesting to have that plot going on there. So, but overall, good episode. I always love Cardassians. They're hilarious.
Yeah. I know. I know. We spent so much
ridiculousness.
We've spent so much time with the Cardassians. I'm kind of in the middle if I really want to see him again, because maybe we've done too much, but I would also love to see what's Garak doing, because Garak kind of ended up as the de facto leader of Cardassia after the events of the end of the series. So makes me curious, but in some ways it's almost kind of good to just let Andy Robinson had his book, which he did a reading from on the cruise, which was awesome. And I've really got to get around to reading it. He wrote a book, Kay, right after the series ended, about Garak's life after in the ruins of Cardassia, and then it also told his backstory and stuff. Stitch in Time is the name of the book. It's in print, but apparently he's working on an audiobook version, which is better for me.
I was just going to ask if there's an audio version that he reads, because
I think it's in the works, and I wanted to ask him. I wanted to ask him.
It's also just amazing to listen to. So new material of him speaking as Garak, which is great.
His delivery.
It was wonderful to listen to. I loved it.
I just remember I have to change what episode is my favorite.
Okay, that's all right. Well, okay. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, speaking of, I get the feeling it's not going to be this next one, but Peter, I think episode 16 is yours.
Okay, episode 16.
Make it quick. I think we can make it quick.
Directed by Renee Ajer-Benoit, written by Ari Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolf, so the star team again. debuted February 20th, 95. Quark discovers that Grand Nagus Zek has written a new, virtuous and benevolent set of the rules of acquisition, which would put an end to traditional Ferengi ways. So sad. Bashir is oddly disturbed and he is nominated for a highly prestigious medical award.
Boring.
Cough, cough. Capitalism. Cough, cough.
Yeah. Yeah, the B plot of this one was the major stinker for me. It's like, who gives two shits? I'm
Bashir
sorry.
Was just bizarre. It didn't really add anything for me. And we haven't had the genetic stuff revealed at this point in the show.
No, season 5, no. I think.
So retrospectively, this is just an odd episode.
And and just evidence that they hadn't really constructed that part of his background. Yeah.
But
right. Well, and I was trying to figure out, is it like, is it supposed to humanize him? Because like it seems to do the exact opposite, where he's like the most gifted, doctor in Starfleet. Yeah. And we're supposed to feel bad that he didn't get this award.
He doesn't get it because he doesn't want to feel like he's superior
on his way down. Yeah, exactly. Like, I've reached pinnacle of my career. It's just dumb. All right. Well, how about the A story? How do we feel about
the A story?
That
is hilarious. It's stupid, but it's hilarious.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Is it? But I guess the real question is, and again, I know we're kind of going round robin on this one, but is it stupid and hilarious in a way that works, or stupid and hilarious in a way that you feel like this is a filler episode? Because I'm going to go with
I think
B.
it's definitely filler. I think it's definitely
filler. It's still one that I can go back and watch. It's not like it's not filler where I'm sitting there going like, bleh.
Oh God! Looking at that, I mean, I would argue that any DS9 Ferengi episode is fun and watchable. If although the one in season 2 with Pell, the woman who pretends to be a man, that's kind of an eye roller. Right. Yeah, that's an eye roller without a doubt.
Like
but
the later ones, like the Magnificent Ferengi and all that.
Oh my God! Or the final Mirror Universe episode in season 7. It was the final appearance of that, and then where they have to go in and rescue Moogie or the Nagus, or I'm trying to remember. We'll know when we get there. Gotcha. Any other thoughts before? Like I said, I thought we were all kind of like, meh. Kay, what do you think?
I mean, I always enjoy Wallace Shawn's portrayal of Zek, and I thought it was fun to see his spin on a different portrayal of Zek. But I wouldn't, say it was, like the best episode. Like, it's not one that I think back on when I'm thinking of like core DS9 episodes.
No.
Yes,
it is funny though when Quark goes to talk to the prophets, and basically his solution is blackmail. Like, you fix this, or all the Ferengi will show up and annoy you. It's like,
yes.
Right.
I mean, he wasn't wrong, because
it definitely wasn't. No,
it was very funny that that's his solution.
Right. Like, it was very, very
negotiate
Quark.
with you? Should I argue with you? Should I convince you? No, we'll just annoy you to death.
There you go. Very good. All right. Okay. I'm going to jump into episode 17, which is Visionary. We got Reza, but we're never going to say this dude's name right, but Reza, he does keep showing up. Story is by Ethan Koch and teleplay is by John Shirley. Two people who I don't think were staffers, because I don't feel like I've ever heard their name before, from Feb of 95. Another O'Brien gets beaten up episode. That's right. Exposure to radiation causes O'Brien to jump 5 hours forward into the future for brief periods, including one that shows DS9's destruction, while the station hosts Romulan and Klingon delegation. So we're starting to really deepen the Romulan part of this show, which I love, because the Romulans are just a traditional toss-up. In the original series, they were invented. They didn't get used a lot because the ears were expensive. That was always the argument that I've heard. Like, we put the Klingons in the original series because we could paint them brown and give them fake mustaches, and we had aliens. Where, having 50 extras with ears was too expensive for us on a show that had no budget. We got a hell of a lot more of them in TNG, but not as real regular aliens, kind of a little bit more as Cold Warriors. And then, it extends on into here that we get some nice, decent appearances. And this is great. This is Romulans doing Romulan stuff. Lying, cheating, stealing, killing, doing things in the shadows. I dug it. And having the Klingons in there, obviously, they're traditional blood enemies, so it's good to see them kind of mix things up, though the Klingon piece was a lot smaller. But, more O'Brien just being the foil to getting killed. He does actually die in this episode, but much like,
nice.
Yeah, much like Harry Kim in the Deadlock episode of Voyager, there's another version of him that just comes back. And Kay, I remember when you and I did that episode, you're like, how come that wasn't like crippling for him emotionally for the rest of his life? That he was a copy, or he was from a different reality or whatever. But I guess in Starfleet, you're just kind of like, man, whatever, bro, it's good. I'm gonna be fine.
Yeah, I'm like, we should like turn this into a drinking game or something, as far as like how many times like an alternate just shows up, because I'm pretty
Duplicate.
sure. Has O'Brien been duplicated before? I feel like he might have been.
Yes, the season 2. What was the episode? What was the name of the episode, Peter? You know the one I'm talking about. Not the alternate, but it was the.
Oh yeah, where he had like a bunch of clones or something.
He had a clone that replaced him, and even we didn't know until the like seriously the last 2 minutes when it was revealed. With the Parada, that was the name of the aliens, and I cannot remember the name of the episode. It's killing me, but it was in the like last quarter of season 2, so not even really that long before this. So yeah, the duplicate, O'Brien, much like all Starfleet engineers, is just a foil to get beating the crap out of Scotty, Geordi, Trip Tucker, B'Elanna, just to absolutely get brutalized. I don't know what it is about wearing that red/gold uniform that it's an extension of the red shirt bit. I don't know. It's kind of tough. All right. Well, Peter,
keep coming back. So
yeah, they die and keep coming back. So, all right, where do we leave off? Other thoughts? Anybody jump in? Sorry, now I'm way off track. I apologize.
I would have preferred to see more of the Romulan versus Klingon delegation, because they were like kind of setting that up, and then it turned into this, O'Brien jumping back and forth for 5 hours at a time.
Right. It's just a tease, right?
Yeah, that part was honestly kind of boring to me, because everything that was going around him had to do with the Klingon Romulan kind of like tiff that was happening and the strife that was there, but you never actually felt any like resolution or like stakes to it, because everything was done through O'Brien's perspective. So I guess I would have liked to see a different avenue taken to get to that.
Yeah.
And also like fair. I knew that was a Romulan warbird that was like doing like the temporal. They're like, I don't know, some weird like temporal shift thing is orbiting our station. I'm like, 3 Romulans just showed up. How do you not know that's a warbird?
And they totally did that in an episode of TNG at the end of season 6. It was the Timescape one where they got it was a group of our people. They were in a runabout, and it was all framed about what's going on, and it was the artificial quantum singularity that powers the Romulan warp drive causes temporal shit to happen. It should come with a damn warning label. Boop, may cause temporal anomalies. Thank you.
Also, did everybody's shoulders get bigger? I feel like everybody's shoulders, it was like the era of shoulder pads.
By the way, total sidebar, if you're watching our YouTube, in Peter's faux background, a dog just came into focus and then walked into the back of Ops. It was awesome. So Peter, you'll have to watch the video when Todd publishes it, which is funny because Kay's the one who's dog sitting, yet Peter had the dog appearance. It's amazing. Even in Ops, we can't keep the pets out of here. Because I'm in the studio now, I keep the cats out, because otherwise you would just hear meow meow and then a cat fly at my face. We just don't need to see that. You're right. I liked more Klingon Romulan stuff than I liked O'Brien getting tortured again, because snore. So anyway, Peter, other thoughts before we move on?
For me, this is one of the weaker time travel stories. And we know how much I love time travel stories. I didn't really care for this one that much.
I hear you.
So, but again, the Romulan Klingon stuff, that's interesting. O'Brien's suffering, it's a trope, and it gets a little old sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It's a little more run of the mill.
O'Brien, but
not so much enjoying just seeing him getting killed all the time. That's fair. Okay, now in running for your least favorite episode of the bunch, that would be number 18. Who's up? Kay, you're up.
I think it's me. Yeah, we've got Distant Voices, written by Alexander Singer, story by Joe Manusky, and teleplay by Iris Stephenbear and Robert Hewitt Wolfe.
All big stars,
95. Mm-hmm. So approaching his 30th birthday, Julian Bashir is subjected to a telepathic attack by an alien seeking a restricted substance. He wakes up to find the station almost deserted and that he is aging rapidly. So, this was a Bashir mind in a bottle type of episode. I did think that it was weird that he was starting to have like a midlife crisis at 30 when like the average lifespan in that era is like
It's
120
like
years.
200. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, that'd be like the equivalent of being like 19 nowadays, of being like, oh, my life is half over. Like, this is where adulthood starts. And I'm like,
That is what
like,
19-year-olds act like, though.
in all
so
fairness,
much drama.
That's true. That's
much
true.
drama.
There's so much drama.
Sorry.
But I don't know. This is the part where I feel like sometimes they miss out on like the anthropology aspect they could have, as far as like how would living that long have changed our culture.
Oh, that's a very
like
good
moving
point.
forward, would like, we start school later, would we take time between like secondary education and our careers, and like
Right.
that kind of stuff, versus it just being like this rush forward.
Right.
I mean, overall I thought it was an interesting idea. I mean, anything with Bashir, I'm kind of like, okay, like I don't love him, I don't hate him. I mean, I did like, we got Garak, and he got to kind of be the foil to Bashir, and that was very enjoyable, because you find out that it's like the alien posing as Bashir in his mind, or posing as Garak in his mind. Ooh, interesting.
Right. Ooh. Make it interesting, damn it.
So, yeah, and it was one of those where I was like, okay, I get, like, it was interesting. It wasn't like amazing.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
That's a decent point. Yeah, me, this was kind of weak for me. I don't like the mind in a bottle. I don't like the Bobby in the shower scene, which is a Dallas reference, which I know I've made in the past, and you guys don't know what Dallas is, but that's okay. But just to let you know that was a nighttime soap in the 70s and the 80s, and one entire season of it had to do with the character dreaming what happened, and in the final episode, he wakes up, or no, his wife, who died during the season or whatever it is, wakes up, walks in the bathroom, and then Bobby Ewing, he was the guy who was the dad on Step by Step, was in the shower. He was supposed to have been in, he was in the shower showering, and the whole thing was a dream. So yeah, I don't like the mind in a bottle. Like, thank God it wasn't a whole season. It's great that it's just an episode, and then you move on to the next one, which happens to be a really great episode. So yeah, this didn't really do it for me. I understand where they're coming from, trying to have him do a whole Herman's Head kind of thing. Oh my God, there's another reference you guys won't get. That was a sitcom in the 90s from Fox. Sorry. Where the whole series was, the guy had four voices. It was a predecessor. I know I've talked about this before. It was a predecessor to that Pixar movie. What was it? In and Out, or what's the one about Inside Out, where it was all about the feelings, and we're all represented by little characters. That's what that show was, and it was a weekly sitcom, and I liked it. But nobody else did. That's why it got canceled. But this was the same kind of thing. What's funny, it was airing it right around the same time, and it was on UPN, so it was the same. It was the same people. Oh, I wonder. Oh, but this was written by Ira and Robert Hewitt, so it's not like this was like. And the guys from Herman Heads came over and wrote an episode of Star Trek. That would have made more sense to me than having this, what I thought was a duffer. So whatever, I got it. It's not a fake.
Took us on a journey, Charlie.
That's you know what, fair listeners, that's what I'm here for. Peter, what are your thoughts?
This was an okay episode. It definitely kind of had it definitely has that feeling of like the episode with Beverly stuck in the static warp shell,
right,
from TNG. Kind of that sort of deal. So like, something's wrong from the get-go, and you're just like, okay, whatever.
You're just like, okay, whatever.
I always love having Garak, even if it's not officially Garak, but Garak on screen doing Garak-y things is always entertaining for me. And especially at the end, it's like, I find it interesting, Doctor, that I was the villain in your dream. like, what does that tell? What does that say about our relationship? Well, it means that you're very smart.
Yeah, you're a good.
It means
puppy.
that there's
it's
hope
okay.
for you yet. That's what he said. But it's just great, the relationship that they have of Garak just constantly poking at him and giving him grief. So there's a couple good Garak moments in this episode, but other than that,
that's fair.
I mean.
That's fair. Well, if you didn't love that one, you're going to love the next one. Peter, episode 19.
Episode 19, Through the Looking Glass, directed by Winrick Colby, written by Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolf, aired April 17 of 95. Cisco is convinced by Smiley O'Brien from the Mirror Universe to assume the role of the dead Captain Cisco.
Yes! Cisco getting a lot of strange from people he knows that aren't people he knows. Kind of skeevy.
Yes. I realized I was like, if being like making it in the mirror dimension means I constantly have to be making out or having sex with my coworkers, I would not hack it.
This
never even occurred to me. I should avoid the mirror universe.
Yes, because you're going to end up having sex with people that you don't know that look like people you know and have the same name. Talk about an ultimate male fantasy, but it's a little bit like telling that it's super easy for our Cisco to just be like, I'll have sex with Kira and Dax, even though they're coworkers of mine and I'm not actually attracted to them, but for the mission, I'll just, I'll be James Bond. He was kind of James Bond in his way through this deal and reconnecting with the mirror version of his long dead wife. There was a lot going on here, but anyway, Kay, who read it? Peter, you read it? You get to go first.
I like Mirror Universe episodes generally. I know some people think that the Mirror Universe is played out. I think it's played out currently, but I like when it was in Deep Space Nine. I think
because they brought it back. They were really the ones that fleshed it out.
I enjoyed a chunk of this episode. Maybe not the whole sleeping with everybody part because whatever. Not great, but it's always interesting for me how they go in and like try to change how O'Brien like blackmails him to like fix their problem for them.
Right.
So like
we need you.
There's a lot of good parts in this episode. There's some hilarious parts, especially the confrontation between Cisco and Commandant Kira. That's
the intendant. Yes.
Yeah.
I
thought she's
intendant. No, it's intendant. Yeah. Okay. Commandant would be more like like the head of Starfleet Academy, like your teacher. I wouldn't say she was much of a teacher, at least not of anything that most people would want to learn and then get killed at the end.
Entertaining to have. I know I keep bringing this character up, but Mirror Garak. It's Garak again.
Yep.
He's so nasty. I know.
It's so enjoyable seeing a different take on the character and the evil version.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, so this would be how Garak would be if he was like actually a really bad
regular ass Cardassian. Yeah. So much, dick swing and office politics on Garak-Nor. You know what I mean? The tenant's like, well, you're not getting the quotas up. So what are you going to do to change that? Well, I've tried random beatings and just killing people and whatever. And somehow it's not motivating people. They were doing shtick,
Well, and also if you're consistently executing your staff, it might be why your ore processing is down by 15% because you've killed 15% of your staff. I don't know.
Are you saying this could wait, I'm feeling it. New name of the episode, something related to HR in the Mirror Universe. There we go. HR in the Mirror Universe. All right. Okay. So like I said, we'll say that one more time.
Garak-Nor HR or Garak and Tarek HR.
Garak-Nor.
Garak-Nor HR. Oh my God, nailed it. I wasn't sure we were going to get a great killer name for this episode, but we did it. This was definitely my favorite, I would say, of the bunch. I love, and again, it's not, Cisco is kind of like, I'm a cowboy sleeping with people and yada, yada, blizzardy blues. But you know what? He got in there. He got the job done. He was a badass. I'm leaving the sleeping with people out of it part. He was a badass getting the job done, fought the good fight, helped Smiley out, helped out the rebellion, got Jennifer over to the good side of stuff. I liked all part of it. It was you know what? I hate to use the word rip roaring adventure, but here we are. It was a rip roaring adventure. I loved it.
Yeah, I think that this is one that I could probably leave. I feel like with a mirror dimension, I love that the stories behind it and like the plot ideas are really, really great. But I feel like everybody kind of comes down to a caricature of themselves where like
I can see that.
Everyone is evil. Like Cisco's an ass, Kira's an ass, Bashir's an ass, even O'Brien's an ass. Like everybody's an ass.
There's a whole lot of ass.
That's like the mirror. Yeah, that's the mirror dimension version. But at that point, I'm like, why are they like? I feel like in Discovery, like even though they really, really played it out, they put a little bit more motivation behind the characters besides just like, everybody's promiscuous and is yelling at each other.
There's a little bit more mustache twirling in them. Yeah. I get it. Peter, thoughts? Did we already get your thoughts? Now I'm losing track.
We did.
Okay, very good. Then it's time to move on, and it's weird just because when I pace these episodes out, we have 26 episodes, so it's 6-7-6-7, so that we get them across 4 episodes of our show. Unfortunately, that landed us on a part 1 of 2. So we're creating a cliffhanger within this episode to our next episode, and that would be with episode 20. So, Kay, I think you're up.
Yeah, so this is episode 20, and Probable Cause, directed by Avery Brooks, stories by Robert Letterman and David R. Long, teleplay by Renee Echevarria, and it aired April 24th of 95. And this is when Garak's tailor shop is bombed, forcing Odo to investigate who is trying to kill the Cardassian exile and why. Part 1 of 2. My favorite episode, just because you get so many amazing lines from Garak.
Yeah. I'm going to have to flip the script and say this is my favorite too. I mean, hands down. I guess I wasn't even considering, but this is as much Garaking as you get, and it's that much more character explanation of his that you understand. And this is without the reveal, which we don't get till later in the series, is that Enabritane is his father. And they're still like, well, it's the elephant in the room that they just, and you see more of it in part 2, which let's not spoil it by talking about part 2. But they just don't even talk about it. They are in such deep denial. Denial is not just a river on Earth, it's a river on Cardassia. They are bad, not really talking shit through, because he's Nabritane's love child or whatever, however that is. But holy shit, what a great episode. But anyway, back to you guys.
So, it started out with a really kind of great, day in the life kind of episode. You've got Garak having lunch with Bashir, and then Kira comes over and starts talking to Bashir about, a new alien species that they're kind of setting up where you're like, oh, there's going to be this really weird, corrosive alien species. This is probably where where the plot's going to come from. And then boom, Garak's shop gone. It's just gone. And he's setting this up, and again, you just get so many amazing quips from him, like when they're putting the list of suspects together, and Garak adds Kira's name to the list, and Bashir's like, dude, come on. And he's like, no, I'm serious, doctor. I don't think she likes me.
And Odo's like, she doesn't, but I don't think she would try to kill you.
And
I hate to break it to you, Garak, but she has an alibi.
Oh, damn it.
Or, he says that he's been exiled for refusing to pay his taxes, and Odo was like, come on. And he's like, do you really think I'd lie about that? It's not something I'm proud of.
Oh my God, he's so good. And what's so Garak?
Good.
Garak's great line later in the series, he said, lying is like any skill. If you want to maintain a certain level of mastery, you have to practice. And he just keeps going. Yes, what's the truth?
Yeah,
especially the lies.
In this one, when he's talking about lying, because Bashir tells him the story of the boy who cried wolf, and Bashir says the moral is not to lie, because once you do it so often, no one will believe you. And Garak just goes, no, the idea is that you don't still tell the same lie twice.
Same lie twice. Oh my God. Yeah, you're right. He was a nonstop quip machine in this episode. This was Garak's quip. You know what? I wouldn't change the name of it, but if I was, it would be the Garak quip machine. I think that would be pretty great. Yes. But Garak-Nor HR is the name of the episode, hands down.
Well, and then you also get the amazing relationship building between Odo and Garak, where Odo just flat out destroys him in his office.
Oh my goodness.
And I gotta say, I think Garak might have enjoyed it a little bit, because he was just like, oh, this is fun. This isn't Bashir.
Yeah, right.
It's finally where he gets to do some mental jousting with someone who's willing to joust.
Maybe a little Odo daddy going on. I don't know.
Whoa, hello. That's going in a different direction. Oh my goodness. Peter, what are your thoughts? Did this nail it for you, or what are you thinking?
Oh yeah, this is a great episode. I love these 2 episodes. We're not talking about part 2, but I love both of them here, especially this one. As I have mentioned several times in this podcast, I love Garak, and this has a lot of Garak.
Do you? Do you love Garak?
No,
okay, that's good. That's good to know. It's good to know. I'm glad to hear it.
But yeah, so my favorite person, Garak, is in this episode so much, and as we've said, so many quips, so many lines, so much ridiculousness. It's just really enjoyable. Obviously, there's the whole other bit with Enabritane and all of that, and then we get the Romulans involved, and so that's kind of cool. Where we get finally some more. This is where we start to get more movement towards the Dominion War itself, and so that we see that Sisyphean boulder start rolling.
Mm-hmm,
So that's So that's also another good part. So basically, the writing in this episode is solid. It has a lot of heart, a lot of ridiculousness, and yeah, it's just overall great episode.
Yeah. And directed by Avery Brooks, too. So, yeah,
Garrett.
which is great because his previous episode, which he directed in our last batch, was Fascination, which I don't think we really liked very much.
Nobody liked it.
It was a big thumbs down. All right. Any further thoughts before we move on to our grand picking of favorites and least favorites? We're good? Ready? All right. Kay, I think you already said, but say it again. Give us a favorite and a least favorite.
Improbable Cause would definitely be my favorite. And then I think probably Through the Looking Glass, just because Visionary or Distant Voices at least had Garak.
Oh, fair. Well, I'll give you 50% of that in agreement. Improbable Cause, somewhat tied with Through the Looking Glass, but again, it's a little bit more, pew, 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 and maybe that's not so Star Trek-y. But Improbable Cause, it's impossible tonight. And I thought Distant Voices was a snore. I don't need my Herman's head mixed in with my Star Trek. Thumbs down. Peter.
I'm going to be uncreative and say that Improbable Cause is the best episode out of the lot, because, it is.
Yeah.
And my least favorite out of this group would probably be Visionary.
Okay. Oh, God. Why didn't I pick that? Damn it.
Because it's not great time travel, and Me, the Philosopher, hates how they kind of do it. So
yeah, fair. Yeah, I could have picked that one, or I could have picked Prophet Mode because it was too silly, but it was still fun. So cool. All right, that wraps us up. So in our next episode, we will be finishing Deep Space Nine, season 3, and then we're going to be moving on to Voyager season 3, which will just be Kay and myself, because Peter gets the Voyager boot. Boop. But no, this was great. And then obviously we're going to be getting into the back half of Picard season 3, and they've got a lot going on. So I'm going to start reading the outro. That's going to be my new contribution. For more information about Starfleet International, please visit Grand Petoskey on Facebook, Twitter, and at our website, gang. As always, thank you for joining us. Peter, where do people find you out there on the intrawebs?
You can find me out at the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas on most socials. I probably won't say anything, but you can find me. You can also find me at ELH's channel on Twitch or YouTube, where I play a Vulcan chief engineer.
Excellent. Kay, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at QTGeek. That's Q_T_Geek. And then on Counter Social at K Quinn.
Excellent. You can find me over on Twitter at the C3. Go ahead and spell it out. As previously mentioned, the USS Grand Petoskey is the chapter of the International Star Trek Fan Club run by myself and my lovely wife, April, of which both Kay and Peter are members. We are based here in West Michigan, but we have members from all over the place. I also run Region 13 of SFI, which also includes Eastern Canada. If you're in any of those places or anywhere at all and want to be part of a fan community with a lot of great fun advantages, please drop me a line from the Grand Petoskey website over on Twitter or other places where you can find me. With that, I'm going to tell you, as always, that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
And wherever you go, go boldly.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.